How does a poor boy from a small town in Mexico become one of the world's most powerful drug lords, and how he escaped the world high-security prison not once, but twice? Hello friends. Welcome back to Story Spot. This is the story of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, a man who rose from abject poverty to become a kingpin in the world of illicit drugs. Before starting the video, kindly like the video and subscribe my channel if you're new here. So, let's begin. El Chapo. Born in the humble town of La Tuna, Sinaloa, in Mexico in 1957, El Chapo's childhood was far from idyllic. His family was poor and life was hard. But a different path unfolded before him when he was introduced to the drug trade as a teenager by his uncle, Pedro Aviles Perez. Perez was not just any mentor, he was one of the big Mexican drug trafficker. El Chapo's rise to power truly began in the late 1980s, following the death of Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, the so-called godfather of Mexican drug smuggling. Seeing an opportunity, Guzmán formed the Sinaloa cartel, a criminal organization that would soon become a formidable force in Mexico and beyond. El Chapo, or Shorty, as he was dubbed, due to his 5'6" inches stature, may have been small in height, but his ambitions were towering. The Sinaloa cartel under his watch controlled vast territories. They trafficked tons of cocaine, marijuana, methamphetamines and heroin into the United States and other countries, amassing incredible wealth and power. But as the saying goes, uneasy lies the head that wears a crown. El Chapo's reign saw brutal wars with rival cartels, leading to thousands of deaths and transforming places like Ciudad Juarez into some of the deadliest cities on earth. Through it all, El Chapo managed to rise above the chaos, steadily growing his empire. He was not just surviving in the world of illicit drugs, he was thriving, becoming a figure that was as feared as he was respected. El Chapo, the Shorty, was emerging as a giant in the world of illicit drugs. His journey, however, was far from over. As his power grew, so too did the attention of authorities, setting the stage for a game of cat and mouse that would span decades. With power comes opposition, and in the underworld, opposition often means bloodshed. This was the reality for El Chapo and the Sinaloa cartel. The cartel's dominance did not sit well with rival factions. The bloody wars that ensued were not just turf wars, they were struggles for control, influence, and survival. El Chapo's reign was marked by an escalating cycle of violence. This was not a world of law and order, but a world where the rule of the gun was supreme. A world where alliances were as fragile as glass, and betrayal was often rewarded with a bullet. The cartels were not just fighting each other, they were fighting the government, the police, and sometimes even the army. The impact of these wars was devastating. Cities like Ciudad Juarez became some of the deadliest places on earth. The death toll was staggering, running into the thousands. Innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire became collateral damage in a war they didn't ask for. The violence was not confined to the streets, it seeped into everyday life, creating a climate of fear and uncertainty. Businesses were extorted, police were bribed, and politicians were either bought or intimidated into silence. The social fabric was tearing at the seams. But amidst the chaos, El Chapo was thriving. His empire was growing, his influence was spreading, and his wealth was multiplying. The more the government tried to clamp down, the more audacious he became. He was not just a drug lord, he was a symbol of defiance against a system that many believed was corrupt and unjust. Yet the violence and death were taking a toll. Mexico was bleeding. And the world was watching, horrified yet fascinated by the audacity of El Chapo and the brutality of his reign. The reign of a man who would stop at nothing to maintain his power. A man who was turning Mexico into a battlefield. El Chapo's reign was turning Mexico into a battlefield. In 1993, law enforcement finally caught up with Guzmán. After years on the run, El Chapo's reign came to a brief halt in Guatemala. The authorities there captured him and swiftly extradited him back to his homeland, Mexico. The once untouchable drug lord now found himself confined within the stark gray walls of a Mexican prison. His trial was swift and decisive. The court found him guilty of numerous charges linked to his drug trafficking empire. The sentence? 20 long years in the harsh confines of a Mexican prison. It seemed as if the law had finally caught up with El Chapo, and he was set to spend a significant part of his life behind bars. But, as it turned out, this would merely be a brief interlude in his life of crime. In 2001, 8 years into his sentence, El Chapo orchestrated a daring escape that would go down in history as one of the most audacious prison breaks ever. Allegedly smuggled out in a laundry cart, Guzmán slipped through the fingers of Mexican authorities. His escape highlighted the deep-seated corruption within the Mexican prison system, a system that was supposed to keep him confined, but instead aided his escape. News of the escape sent shockwaves around the world. The man who was once the world's most powerful drug trafficker was on the loose again. His escape underscored his power and influence, even from within the confines of a supposedly secure prison, and it also demonstrated just how elusive El Chapo could be. But what did this mean for the world outside those prison walls? Well, it meant that El Chapo was free to rebuild his empire, to continue flooding the streets with illegal drugs, and to reignite the bloody cartel wars that had previously left thousands dead. Even from behind bars, El Chapo was proving to be elusive. His escape was a stark reminder of the power he wielded, and the influence he had, not just in Mexico, but around the world. And it would set the stage for his next chapter, one that would be even more dramatic and audacious than his first escape. Guzmán's freedom was short-lived. He was recaptured in 2014 but proved once again that he was not one to be easily contained. After 13 years on the run, law enforcement finally managed to apprehend Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán in February 2014. The arrest took place in a seaside resort town in Mexico. But if authorities thought they had finally tamed the beast, they were sorely mistaken. El Chapo's second incarceration was at Altiplano, a maximum security prison in Mexico, where he was placed under 24-hour surveillance. But El Chapo had other plans. Just over a year into his sentence in July 2015, the world was stunned as news broke of his audacious escape. This escape was even more daring than the first. It involved an underground tunnel that stretched for over a mile, leading from his cell to a construction site outside the prison walls. The tunnel, equipped with ventilation, lighting, and even a modified motorcycle on rails to speed up the journey, was a testament to the meticulous planning that went into this operation. It was a clear indication of the corruption and complicity within the Mexican prison system. The audacity of the escape sent shockwaves around the world. The Mexican authorities had been made to look like fools. The tunnel had been dug right under their noses, and El Chapo had disappeared into thin air once again. This escape further highlighted the vast power and influence El Chapo wielded, even from behind bars. It was a strong statement of his refusal to be caged, and a stark reminder of the corruption that allowed his operations to flourish. The incident also triggered a massive manhunt, both domestically and internationally. The world watched, captivated as authorities scrambled to recapture the elusive drug lord. It was a real-life game of cat and mouse, with El Chapo always seeming to be one step ahead. But beyond the drama and the action, this escape underscored a serious issue: the endemic corruption within the Mexican prison system. It raised questions about how such a high-profile prisoner could escape from a maximum security prison, not once, but twice. It highlighted the need for significant reform and accountability within the system. El Chapo's second escape was a stark reminder of the audacity of this notorious drug lord. It demonstrated his resourcefulness, his determination, and the lengths he would go to maintain his freedom. But it also shone a spotlight on the systemic issues within Mexico's prisons and the far-reaching influence of the Sinaloa cartel. El Chapo had pulled off another daring escape, cementing his reputation as a master escapist. His story serves as a cautionary tale about the power of corruption and the need for reform in prison systems worldwide. Guzmán's second taste of freedom, however, was briefer than his first. Following his audacious escape, El Chapo was on the run for nearly 6 months, but his days as a free man were numbered. In a joint operation between Mexican Marines and the United States Drug Enforcement Administration, Guzmán was recaptured in January 2016 in the city of Los Mochis, Sinaloa. This time, the Mexican authorities took no chances. To avoid another embarrassing escape, they quickly moved to extradite Guzmán to the United States, a country notorious for its maximum security prisons. The process, however, was not without hurdles. Guzmán's lawyers filed a series of appeals, delaying his extradition for nearly a year. But in January 2017, El Chapo was finally handed over to the U.S. authorities. In the United States, Guzmán faced a litany of charges. His trial, held in Brooklyn, New York, was a spectacle. For security reasons, the Brooklyn Bridge was shut down every day when Guzmán was transported from his cell to the courthouse. The trial, which lasted 3 months, was an eye-opener. Testimonies from former associates, employees, and even a mistress painted a damning picture of Guzmán's life of crime. They spoke of his brutal methods, his vast network, his opulent lifestyle, and most importantly, his role in the global drug trade. the evidence against Guzmán was overwhelming. In February 2019, after deliberating for 6 days, the jury found him guilty on all counts. The charges included drug trafficking, engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise, murder conspiracy, and money laundering. The verdict marked the end of El Chapo's reign of terror. But the legal drama was not over yet. In July 2019, Guzmán was back in court for his sentencing. His lawyers argued for leniency, citing his age and claiming that he was a victim of a corrupt system. But the judge was unmoved. The court sentenced Guzmán to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 30 years. The judge also ordered Guzmán to forfeit over $12 billion, an estimated figure of his drug trafficking earnings. Today, El Chapo is held in ADX Florence, a maximum security prison in Colorado, often referred to as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Known for its stringent measures, the prison is home to some of the most dangerous criminals in the United States. Guzmán, once a powerful and feared drug lord, now spends his days in a small cell, isolated from the world. The story of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán is a dramatic tale of rise and fall. It's a stark reminder of the impact of drug trafficking on society and the violence and corruption it breeds. But it also shows that no one, not even the king of the drug world, is above the law. El Chapo, once the king of the drug world, was now a prisoner for life. El Chapo's story is not just about a single man. It's a tale of global drug trafficking, extreme violence, and deep-seated corruption. It's about a man who rose from poverty to become one of the most powerful drug lords in the world, and the legacy he left behind. The impact of El Chapo's actions on Mexico and the world at large has been profound. His Sinaloa cartel, once a symbol of his power and influence, continues to operate, though without its notorious leader. Despite his absence, the cartel remains a significant player in the global drug trade, a testament to the empire El Chapo built. Under his leadership, the Sinaloa cartel's operations spread across continents, its drugs reaching as far as Europe, Asia, and Australia. The vast network he established, a web of corruption and violence, has left a lasting mark. Cities like Ciudad Juarez, once transformed into battlegrounds for the cartel wars, are still recovering from the scars of past violence. The revenue generated from the drug trade has had a significant impact on the Mexican economy. Some estimates suggest that the removal of such vast sums of money could cause a significant economic downturn. This in itself paints a grim picture of how deeply entrenched the drug trade is within the fabric of society. El Chapo's downfall has also had a ripple effect on the ongoing war on drugs. His capture was hailed as a victory, a symbol of progress. But the reality is far from it. The drug trade continues to thrive. The demand for narcotics remains unabated, and new drug lords have emerged to fill the vacuum left by El Chapo. His escapes from prison in particular highlighted the deep-seated corruption within Mexico's prison system and government. They served as a stark reminder that the problem is not just the drug lords, but the systems that allow them to flourish. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of El Chapo's legacy is how he was seen by some as a Robin Hood-like figure. Despite his crimes, he was revered by many in his home state of Sinaloa, where he was seen as a benefactor who provided jobs and infrastructure. This public admiration underscores the complexity of the problem. It's not just about stopping the drug lords, but also about addressing the socio-economic conditions that allow them to rise to power. El Chapo may be behind bars, but the echoes of his reign still resonate. The question remains, can the world ever truly be free of the influence of men like him? If you like this kind of historical and mysterious content, subscribe my channel and hit the notification button. See you in the next video.